What would you do if you woke up to find the very people meant to protect you were the ones taking everything you had? Today, I'm diving into one of the most disturbing and emotional stories I've ever come across. A case that left me stunned and furious. Imagine being 86 years old, living quietly in your home, only to have the police show up, accuse you of a crime you didn't commit, and rob you of your life savings. $13,000. No charges. No trial. Just gone. Hi, I'm Christopher, and this is not just a story. It's a call for accountability. This is a true story where justice failed a vulnerable woman, and how a single false claim led to a terrifying encounter with law enforcement. This is about the systems that allow it, the pain it causes, and why we must not stay silent. It was a cold Tuesday morning when everything changed for Mrs. Eleanor James. Eleanor had lived in the same small brick house for over 50 years. A widow, a retired schoolteacher, and a grandmother of 6, her days were quiet, filled with crossword puzzles, gardening, and reruns of old detective shows. That morning, she had just finished her oatmeal and was sipping chamomile tea when the knock came. It wasn't the usual friendly knock from her neighbor or a delivery man. It was loud, firm, demanding. When she opened the door, her frail hands trembling on the brass knob, she saw 3 officers on her porch. "Mrs. James?" one asked, already glancing over her shoulder into the house. "Yes." "We're here on official business. We have a warrant to search your property." Eleanor blinked, confused. "I'm sorry, what? What for?" But they didn't answer. They pushed past her, boots stomping over her clean floor mats. Eleanor stood frozen in her own hallway, unsure if she was dreaming or if this was one of those TV shows that came to life. The officers opened drawers, rifled through paperwork, even inspected her cookie jars. Eleanor kept asking questions, but no one explained what they were looking for. Within 20 minutes, one of them came into the living room holding her bank envelope. It was her emergency cash, $13,000 she had slowly saved over the years. Cash, no questions asked. "We're seizing this under suspicion of criminal activity," the lead officer said. "What criminal activity?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. "I don't understand. I'm a retired teacher. That's my savings." They handed her a receipt, an impersonal slip of paper with nothing more than a case number and a signature. And then they were gone. Shaking, Eleanor sat on the floral print couch she'd owned since 1985 and dialed her niece. "They took it," she whispered. "They took everything." Her niece, Michelle, thought Eleanor must be confused. Delirious, maybe, but once she heard the story in detail, she knew something was terribly wrong. Michelle contacted the police department immediately, demanding an explanation. The only response? "We acted on a credible tip." They refused to share details. No name, no warrant copy, nothing. That night, Michelle posted about what happened on social media. Within hours, the post had over 10,000 shares. People were outraged. An 86-year-old woman? What kind of threat could she possibly be? This is why we need oversight. This happened to my father, too. No one believed us. Michelle and Eleanor weren't alone. This wasn't an isolated mistake. It was part of something much bigger. This is when we need to talk about a term most people don't know: civil asset forfeiture. It's a legal process that allows police to take property they suspect is connected to criminal activity, even if no charges are ever filed. Let me say that again. You can lose your money, your car, even your home, without ever being convicted of a crime. It's a loophole that has been used and abused for years. In 2019 alone, police across the U.S. seized over $3 billion in assets, without court orders or due process in many cases. And now, it has happened to Eleanor. News outlets picked up the story. Local journalists called it the grandmother heist. Others weren't so humorous. Civil rights advocates got involved. A national legal watchdog group offered to take Eleanor's case, pro bono. And you know what? This wasn't just about getting $13,000 back. It was about exposing a system that could target anyone, even the most defenseless. A week later, Eleanor sat in front of a camera for a live stream. Her voice cracked as she spoke. "I never thought I'd be treated like a criminal. Not after a lifetime of doing what's right. I paid my taxes. I taught your children. And now they say I don't deserve to be trusted with my own money." The video went viral. Over 2.3 million views in 4 days. And the pressure on the police department grew louder. But they still hadn't returned her money. And they still hadn't explained their actions. Michelle and the pro bono legal team got to work. They began drafting a lawsuit against the department. But more importantly, they requested body cam footage of seizure. What they discovered would break this case wide open. We'll get to that in part 2. This is the story of an 86-year-old woman who became an unintentional warrior for justice. It's a story of power, silence, and a system designed to bury its mistakes. But Eleanor refused to be buried. If this made you feel anything, anger, shock, empathy, then you need to speak up too. Drop a comment below with your thoughts. Have you or someone you know ever experienced injustice like this? Share your voice. And if you're as furious as I am, hit that like button, because stories like Eleanor's need to be seen and shared. Subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss the moment justice fights back. Michelle, Eleanor's niece, had filed a Freedom of Information Act (FOIA) request immediately after the search. Weeks passed. Nothing. Then suddenly, after local press ramped up pressure, the police department finally released a heavily redacted report, but more importantly, body cam footage from one of the officers at the scene. The legal team, Michelle, and Eleanor gathered in their lawyer's office to watch it. The first 20 minutes? Standard procedure. The officers were in the car, joking, not even sure of the address. But then it got worse. When the officers arrived at Eleanor's house, the body cam recorded everything, including what they said when she stepped away. Officer 1, "This is probably nothing, just ticking boxes." Officer 2, "She's old, man. Just grab the cash, log it, and we're out. We're not going to find drugs in her teacups." Laughter, sarcasm, but not an ounce of probable cause. The only thing they seemed to care about was the cash. The footage showed them going through drawers before mentioning any warrant to Eleanor. That alone was a violation of protocol. Michelle posted a 3-minute clip from the footage on her TikTok and Instagram. Within hours, 3.1 million views, 75,000 plus comments. Celebrities reposting with captions like, "How is this even legal?" Civil rights attorneys tagging the Department of Justice. The tide was turning. Fast. The most chilling part came next. According to the sparse paperwork included in the report, the entire search was based on a tip received through a community crime watch hotline. The person's name was blacked out, but Michelle's lawyer filed a motion to unseal it. When it was finally revealed, Eleanor went pale. The person who called in the tip? Her neighbor, Carl. Carl had always been cold, rude, dismissive. He once called code enforcement because Eleanor's garden hedges were too high, and now he had accused her of money laundering because he saw her carrying envelopes of cash. In reality, Eleanor was going to deposit the savings into a certificate of deposit. She had told Carl, casually while they were both taking out trash. That moment of small talk was twisted into a felony suspicion. Eleanor's second live stream was even more powerful than the first. This time, she didn't just speak, she fought back. They say they were protecting the community. Who was protecting me? When did growing old become a crime? The comments section exploded. Supporters offered to donate money to replace what was stolen. But Eleanor didn't want to GoFundMe. She wanted justice. The civil rights legal team filed a federal suit. Illegal search and seizure. Violation of Fourth Amendment rights. Civil asset forfeiture abuse. Emotional distress. Defamation based on false tip. They named the officers, the department, and even Carl as part of the suit. A month later, CNN picked up the story. Then MSNBC. Then BBC. International outrage. People around the world couldn't believe this was happening in the U.S. to a woman who had never even gotten a parking ticket. Carl couldn't hide anymore. Protesters gathered outside his home. Local activists demanded answers. In a brief public statement, Carl stammered, "I just thought something was off. I didn't mean for all this to happen. Too little, too late. Carl became a pariah overnight. His home was vandalized. His employer put him on leave. And eventually, he moved out of the neighborhood completely. Behind the scenes, the city attorney approached Eleanor's legal team with a settlement offer. $18,000 to cover the cash, emotional damages, and legal fees. No admission of wrongdoing. No public apology. Eleanor refused. Her exact words? I don't want their hush money. I want their honesty. Now, Eleanor's case wasn't just about her. It was about reform. A group of state lawmakers reached out, inspired by her bravery. They proposed a new bill to limit civil asset forfeiture in the state, especially against elderly individuals. They even named it the Eleanor Act. This case was about to shift from courtroom to Capitol. The lawsuit went to trial 11 months after the raid. Eleanor would have her day in court. This would be one of the first cases in the state to directly challenge police power on this level. And the world was watching. From being a forgotten senior citizen, Eleanor became a national symbol of resistance. This wasn't about just $13,000 anymore. It was about dignity, rights, and what it means when the people sworn to protect you become the ones who betray you. Let's keep the momentum going. Do you believe Eleanor deserves justice? Then drop a fire in the comments to show you're standing with her. And tell us, should police be allowed to take money from innocent people? Why or why not? Subscribe and turn on all notifications right now. Last time, we exposed a shocking body cam footage that showed officers laughing while ransacking an elderly woman's home. Today, Eleanor, 86 years old, grieving and determined, takes a stand in court against the very people who robbed her $13,000 and her dignity. This isn't just about one woman anymore. This is about every victim of unchecked police power. Let's get into the final chapter. On the morning of the trial, Eleanor stepped out of her niece's car in front of the county courthouse. She was met by hundreds of people holding signs. Justice for Eleanor. Civil forfeiture equals legalized theft. 86, but never silent. News cameras lined the sidewalk. Even international media had flown in to cover what was now being called the case that could change America's forfeiture laws. Eleanor, holding Michelle's arm, walked forward, calm and unshaken. The courtroom was packed. Eleanor's legal team, led by civil rights attorney Rashad Daniels, opened strong. This is not just a lawsuit. This is a referendum on how we treat the powerless when power goes unchecked. We will prove that the police violated Eleanor's rights, targeted her without evidence, and stole her money under the veil of legality. The defense? Cold and calculated. They claimed everything was by the book, that the officers had reasonable suspicion, that no crime was committed in how the money was seized. But the jury wasn't buying it, not after what they were about to see. The prosecution rolled the body cam footage across 3 massive screens. Every gasp from the audience echoed the pain Eleanor had lived through. The officers digging through drawers before announcing a warrant. One said, "She's old, just grab it." The moment Eleanor, confused and trembling, asked, "Am I in trouble?" and was ignored. By the time the lights came back on, even the judge looked shaken. Eleanor was helped up to the stand. In a voice weathered but unwavering, she told the jury, they didn't ask questions. They didn't see their grandmother. They saw a target. My husband served in World War II. I was a nurse for 35 years, and they treated me like a criminal for having saved money. Tears ran down several jurors' faces. Even the courtroom deputies lowered their heads. The defense attorney tried to paint Eleanor as secretive for not keeping her money in the bank, but Rashad quickly countered. She's part of a generation that didn't grow up trusting banks. That doesn't make her a criminal. It makes her cautious. And since when is caution crime? The jury nodded. Public sentiment was clear. The lead officer, Jacob Thompson, was called to testify. He seemed smug at first, until he was asked one damning question. Rashad, "Officer, at what point during the search did you locate drugs or evidence of crime?" Thompson, "We didn't find any." Rashad, "So, why did you confiscate $13,000 from a woman who had committed no crime?" Thompson, pause. "It was standard protocol." That answer rang like a siren in the courtroom. Protocol over innocence. After 5 days of testimony, the jury began deliberations. Hours passed. The courtroom waited. Eleanor sat quietly, hands folded. Finally, the doors opened. The judge read the verdict. The jury, find in favor of the plaintiff, Eleanor Jean Carter, on all counts, and award punitive damages in the amount of $3.5 million. Gasps, then applause, then tears. Eleanor, wide-eyed, simply whispered, "Thank you." She didn't care about the money. She cared that the truth had been heard. The story went viral again, but this time for all the right reasons. Late-night hosts praised Eleanor as a real-life hero. Politicians from both sides applauded the verdict. And on Capitol Hill, lawmakers fast-tracked the Eleanor Act to end civil asset forfeiture against citizens without convictions. Eleanor had changed not just her life, but the law. Weeks later, Eleanor received a letter in the mail. It was from Carl, the neighbor whose false tip had started it all. "I was wrong. I ruined your peace, and I regret it forever. If I could go back and mind my own business, I would. I hope someday you can forgive me." Eleanor folded the letter, placed it in a drawer, and quietly said to Michelle, "He's not the villain anymore. He's just a bitter old man. I've got no room left for bitterness." A year later, the first Eleanor Justice Scholarship was awarded to a young black law student focused on civil rights. Eleanor gave a speech at the ceremony. "You may be young and you may be underestimated, but the law is only as strong as the people who fight for it. Go out there and be someone's justice." The room erupted in applause. Outside Eleanor's house, a small wooden sign now hangs over her door. "Never too old to speak the truth." The woman they tried to silence became a movement. If Eleanor's story moved you, don't let it end here. Comment below. Should civil asset forfeiture be illegal without a conviction? Subscribe now for more real stories of courage, justice, and reform. Share this video with 3 friends who need to see what real accountability looks like. Because when we speak out, change is possible. Thank you for watching.